بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In last week's lesson I was looking at the various requests or the various demands the pagans of Makkah would make to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to verify that he was a true prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to verify the existence of one God and one Allah. And I mentioned in last week's lesson such as they would say to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that say to Allah to widen the city of Makkah, or why don't you tell your God, or why don't you tell Allah to send the angel, and he then tells us or he speaks to us that you are a prophet of Allah, or he tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. So they would make these kind of demands, silly requests on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to verify his authenticity and to verify that what he was preaching was the truth and was the haqq. Now, one thing which should be noted here is that this dunya which we are living in is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even certain things which we think to be futile, even certain things which we take for granted, even those things are considered to be a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ, which means that your wealth, وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ, and your children, fitna, are a source of test, are a source of tribulation for you. Something like money or wealth, which we think to be something we take for granted, something which is like futile, but that money which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to you is a blessing from Him. And this is a ni'mah and this is a blessing, but on top of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses wealth and money to test people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives this person so much money, but the whole idea of giving this person so much money is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see how he reacts with that money. Is he now going to give certain percentage of that, 2.5% annually for zakat to the poor, to the needy, or is he going to now waste this particular money on lavish things, on extravagant things, on things which are haram, things which are unlawful? So wealth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses that to test people. Awladukum, even children, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses that to test you. As I mentioned before, that children, they are a great blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He uses children, He uses our awlad to test us. I mentioned this story before, that once a person, he came to Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab anhu, complaining about his son, that his son is always disobedient to him. Now, Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab anhu, as you probably know, that whenever he saw people or whenever a complaint was done where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rules, where the rules of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where the rules of the Sharia were being broken, he would get very, very angry. So when he heard that person complain about his son, he said to that person, okay, bring your son to me here and I'll sort him out. Now when the son came to Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab anhu, Umar anhu asked him that, what is this your father saying that you're disobeying him, you're not listening to him? Then the son replied to Sayyidina Umar anhu that, oh Umar, don't children have rights over their fathers? That's the same way we always talk about, oh children, they should respect their parents. Don't the children have some rights over their parents, over their fathers? So Umar bin Khattab anhu replied by saying, yes, they do. And then Umar anhu named them that the three main rights which you could say a children or a child has over their parents is that number one is that the father, he chooses a good mother for the child. Meaning that the father, the woman he married, who's going to now bore him the offspring, she has to be herself good, pious. Because as they say that the first school starts from the mother. If the mother is good, then the children tend to be good as well. If the mother, just say for example, is bad, just say her manners are not good, just say her conduct is not good, then the children also learn these things as well. So the first right a child has is that the father chooses a good mother for the child, i.e. the woman the father marries, she has to be pious, she has to be religious. The second right which a child has is that you, i.e. the father, gives a good name to the child. And the third right which a child has over the father is that the father should give the child a good Islamic upbringing, tarbiyah, teaching him from the Holy Quran, teaching about the deen, teaching him about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These three things are imperative, these three things are a prerequisite, these three things are the rights which the child has over the father. Now when Umar radiallahu anhu mentioned this, the child then replied back by saying that my father, he married a mushrika. He married an idol worshipper. So if the mother of the child happens to be an idol worshipper, basically a non-believer, what kind of tarbiyah the mother is going to give to the child? The second thing, the child goes back, he says to Umar anhu that my father gave me the name Julalan. And Julalan means the dung of beetle. Beetle, the dung, the feces of that is called Julalan. So the name the father chose for the son was Julalan. Like for example, feces. Somebody like had a child and he named the child feces or poo or something like that. That's the name he chose. And the third thing was with regards to teaching him from the Holy Quran. Then the son says to Umar anhu that my father did not teach me a single word or a single verse of the Holy Quran. So Umar anhu then turned back to the father and he said that, look, you're complaining about your son disobeying you, but you wronged him before he has wronged you. Meaning that before he started disobeying you, before he has done a zulm upon you, you did a zulm upon him before. You brought him up in such a way without the Islamic upbringing, without the Islamic tarbiyah, then what do you expect the children to become afterwards? If you don't give the tarbiyah to the children, then when they grow up, obviously they're going to be disrespecting you. Obviously they're not going to be listening to you. When you tell them to pray salah, they're not going to pray salah. If you tell them to do this or do that, they're not going to do it. Why? Because when they were young, they weren't given that Islamic tarbiyah and that upbringing. As I was saying that this dunya which we are living in is a test from Allah. The children which we have, the wealth which we have, everything is a test from Allah. Now the whole purpose of Iman is Iman bil Ghaib. It's like a test. Like even if you were to, like for example, look at it broadly, even in the Holy Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Battle of Uhud, as you know that this was such a battle where the Muslims were defeated in that particular battle, and it kind of led to some companions saying to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, O Prophet of Allah, like we are Muslims, we are supposed to be on the truth, we are supposed to be in the haqq. They are the pagans, they were on the false and the batil. How was it that we were defeated in this particular battle? So therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the verse, وَلِيَعْلَمَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلِيَعْلَمَ الَّذِينَ نَافَقُوا, which means that the Muslims were defeated. Why? So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can then differentiate who are the true believers, وَلِيَعْلَمَ الَّذِينَ نَافَقُوا, and who are the munafiqs and who are the hypocrites. So what I'm trying to say is that these things happen in life where even in a battle you may be defeated, but the reason why Allah does it is so that He can test who are the true believers and who are shaky in their belief, who are the munafiqs, who are the hypocrites. Now, as I was saying that the whole purpose of this dunya is that it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the whole purpose of Islam, the whole purpose of Iman and believing in Allah and His Rasul is something which we call Iman bil Ghaib. Believe in the unseen. We haven't seen angels with our own naked eyes, but we believe angels exist. We haven't seen the hereafter. We haven't seen Jannah and Jahannam. But we believe that there will be resurrection. We believe that there is Jannah and there is Jahannam. We haven't even seen Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with our own eyes, but we believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All the prophets before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, we haven't seen them with our own eyes, but we believe in those prophets. We haven't even seen Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we still believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What I'm trying to say is that the whole purpose of Iman is Iman bil ghaib, belief in the unseen. And that's why it's mentioned in the hadith that Tawbah from your sins, Iman will be accepted as long as Malam Yugharghil. Yugharghil meaning the hadith is that as long as the ruh doesn't reach your throat, meaning that when you're about to pass away, when the ruh reaches your throat and the next action or the next movement will be the soul coming out, what happens is that you then see the hereafter. You then start seeing angels. You start then seeing your manzar, mentioned in one particular hadith, you then start seeing the abode of the hereafter. If you're a good person, you start seeing Jannah. If you were a bad person, you then start seeing hell and Jahannam, fire, these kind of things. Now what happens is, Rasulullah said that when the ruh goes there, and you start seeing the hereafter, and you then at that time say, oh Allah, I believe in you, Allah's not going to accept your Iman. Why? Because there's no Iman bil ghaib there. That's what happened to Fir'aun, that when he was drowning, and he then saw the angel of death coming to take his soul away, he then said, oh Allah, I believe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, well, how can your Iman be accepted here? Because you've now seen the hereafter. There's no Iman bil ghaib there. Now going back to what I was trying to say before, the request which the pagans of Arabia were making that, or why doesn't an angel come and tell us that you are a prophet of Allah? Why doesn't Allah do this? Why doesn't Allah do that? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had accepted their request and was to send the angel, then there's no point of Iman. Then there's no meaning of Islam. For example, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows every one of us the hereafter, all the masjids will be full. Everyone will be Muslims in this world. There'll be no disbelievers. There'll be no hasad in people's heart. There'll be no need for da'wah. There'll be no need for tazkiyah. Everyone automatically will become pious. Why? Because they've seen the hereafter. But if the reason why Allah doesn't show these kind of things is so that He can test us whether we do Iman bil ghaib or not. Because if Allah starts showing us things from the hereafter, then there's no point of Iman bil ghaib. That's why He didn't show anything clear to the pagans of Makkah, to the pagans of Arabia, because if they had, then there wouldn't have been no meaning of Iman bil ghaib. Now don't get me wrong, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did show certain clear miracles, but the condition is that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows a clear miracle to anyone or any group, it is obligatory for them to believe straight away. It is obligatory for them to believe in Allah. Otherwise, azab will come and punish them. And a good example of that will be of the people of Salih alayhi salam. Now the people, Salih alayhi salam, a very famous prophet, his story is mentioned in the Quran in many places. Now he would go to his people, he would tell them, come on, believe in Allah. Now they would say that no, and they would all make all these kind of demands. Now one demand they made to Salih alayhi salam is, okay, we will believe in you if your God can create a pregnant she-camel from this mountain. So from this mountain, i.e. made of rocks, stones and so on, if your God or if your Allah can create a she-camel who is pregnant on top from this particular mountain, then we will believe in you. So look, they made a silly demand, an absurd demand. Now obviously Salih alayhi salam, he prayed to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then said, okay, obviously that's easy for Allah. So Allah said, okay, I'll do that. But then tell your people that they have to now believe in me. Now what does Allah do? He does that. He then creates a pregnant she-camel from the mountain, and they see that it's like a proper camel, pregnant, everything. What they wanted, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to them. But what they then did was that they then started denying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Salih alayhi salam, even to the extent that one of the people from that particular group of Salih alayhi salam he then slaughtered this camel of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then what happened? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then sent an azab straight away and totally wiped them away from the face of this earth. So that's the problem. Even like, the pagans of Makkah, they did ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for clear proofs. Rasulullah sallallahu did warn them that, look, if I did show you anything clear, you have to believe in it straight away. Otherwise, if you don't, if you start rejecting it, azab will come from Allah and they will destroy you. So what I'm trying to say is that, all these things the pagans of Makkah asking, or even nowadays as well, if people were to say, all right, if your religion is true, then why doesn't this happen? Why doesn't Allah do this? Why doesn't Allah do that? And tell them that, look, if Allah was to do everything clearly, then there's no point of Iman bil Ghaib. There's no point of Islam. There's no point in any religion. There's no point of, da'wah. Then there'll be no point of everything. Then everybody will be pious and, that's what's the point of this dunya then. What's the point of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala testing us? So therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He never gives a clear sign, clear miracle. Any clear miracles which does come, then it becomes obligatory for the people to follow and act upon, because if they don't, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's azab will come to destroy them. Now Adam was mentioning before that the pagans of Makkah, they tried their utmost best to stop the flow of Islam. People in their hundreds were slowly converting towards Islam, and they were seeing that many people now were becoming Muslims. They tried everything I mentioned in last week's lesson. They tried from persecuting the Muslims, even to the extent that they tried tempting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with wealth and women, thinking that he will give this up. So they tried everything, all the tricks in the book. They tried to stop Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from preaching. They tried everything to stop the flow of people converting to Islam. Now, when they tried everything, they tried all the avenues and the tools they had with them, and they realized that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wasn't giving up on the message and that people were converting to Islam. It kind of hit them that, this may be actually a true religion. It probably it dawned upon them that actually maybe a true religion from God, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam may be a Rasul and a messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes people, they make some kind of false claims that, I'm a prophet or I'm this or I'm that. And when they see the backlash and everything, then they kind of give up their claim and say, I was just joking and so on. But when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was saying this, and then on top of that, he was proper, firm in what he was saying, and people were converting in their hundreds and so on, they actually realized that actually this may be a true prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the pagans of Makkah, they were you could call them proper jahil. They were proper ignorant people. They knew nothing about, the previous books and the previous scriptures. And in those days, the people who had the knowledge were the Jewish rabbis. Now, the Jewish rabbis and the Jewish community, they mainly lived in Medina Munawwara. And we're going to look at this later. The reason why they were in Medina Munawwara is because their books foretold that the final prophet and the final messenger will migrate to Medina, Yathrib. So they already went there in preparation for the final prophet. So that's where many of the Jewish rabbis were based. So now the leaders of Quraysh, there were two of them, Nadr bin Harith and Abu Mu'ayth. They went to Medina Munawwara to speak to the Jewish rabbis and basically find out that, look, this person is claiming to be a prophet and a Rasul. Is it true? Is what he's saying? Is he a true prophet of Allah? Do the previous scriptures or the books say anything or predict anything of a final prophet? Now they went to the Jewish rabbi, and the Jewish rabbi said to Nadr bin Harith and Abu Mu'ayth that ask this person 3 questions. If he answers all 3 of them, then it means that he's not a true prophet of Allah. If he obviously cannot answer any one of them, then obviously it means he's not a true prophet of Allah. However, if he answers the first 2 questions and not the 3rd one, then it means that yes, he is a true prophet of Allah. Now the 3 questions the Jewish rabbis told Nadr bin Harith and Abu Mu'ayth to ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were, number 1, the story of the people of the caves, Ashab Kahf. The second question they told Nadr bin Harith and Abu Mu'ayt to ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was with regards to Zulqarnain. And the third question they asked to then ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was with regards to the soul. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. Now they came back to Makkah and they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam these three questions. Now as you know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam doesn't reply by himself. He waits for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's reply. So he then said to them that I will let you know tomorrow. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not say the word inshallah. He said, I'll tell you tomorrow. Now what happened? Then the ulama have said that then there was a delay in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answering these three questions. One opinion says that there was a delay of 3 days. Another opinion says that there was a delay of 15 days. And a third opinion goes on to say that there was a delay of 40 days. Thereafter was the wahi was revealed and the answer was revealed. And obviously during those 15 days or 40 days, the Quraysh, they started taunting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying, oh, look, you're not a prophet, you can't answer these three questions, where is your wahi, where is your divine revelation? So 40 days later, when the answers were revealed, then at the same time, another verse was revealed where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that always say inshallah. Don't say that you're going to do something tomorrow. Always say inshallah, I'll do it tomorrow, if Allah wills. Because remember, everything which happens in this world is all based on Allah's will. For me to walk out of this room today, if Allah doesn't will that, then I won't be walking out of this room. And it goes for every one of us. Like if Allah, say for example, has destined that there will be death for us here in this room, we won't be walking out of this room, we won't be walking out of the front door. So exactly as well that anything which happens in this dunya, even something small, it all happens because of Allah's will. So at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that always say inshallah, don't say I'm going to do it tomorrow, because if Allah doesn't will that, if Allah's Mashiach isn't there, then that thing will not come into existence. Now just very briefly regarding the three questions which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was posed from the pagans of Makkah and the various replies which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave. Now with regards to the people of the cave, that's mentioned in the Quran quite clearly. The first part of Surah Al-Kahf talks about the story of these 7 youngsters. What happened was that there was an oppressive king in the name of Daqyanus. And in that time, he practiced idol worshipping and he forced everyone to worship idols. And there were 7 youngsters, and they knew that idol worshipping was something wrong, and they rebelled against this oppressive king, Daqyanus. Now, the king said to the 7 youngsters that, look, I give you an ultimatum. If you come back to your forefathers' religion, if you come back to my religion, then I'll spare your life. Otherwise, if you don't, I'm going to kill you. Now, what happened was that the 7 youngsters, they then went to a cave, and they thought that, okay, we just rest here for a few hours, then we'll think about our next plan or our next move. But what happened was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them go to sleep for 309 years. Over 3 centuries they were sleeping. Now, 309 years later, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala woke them up again, so they thought that they probably slept for a few hours. So they woke up and they then went to the bazaar, to the market, and they saw that everything had changed. What happened was that before it was an idol-worshipping community, idol-worshipping town, but now Christianity was prevailing everywhere. Christianity at that time was the Deen Haq, so it was all like oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and everybody believing in one God. And the whole purpose of this particular incident of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving death to these youngsters for 309 years to show the truth of life after death. That for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to resurrect someone is something which is easy. He could give you death, and then for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, click of a finger, he could just say, okay, you now get back to life, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be able to do that. So that's like the whole purpose or the aim of giving them death for such a long time, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala resurrecting them. With regards to Zulqarnain, a very famous person, he would travel from the east to the west, and he would travel and he conquered so many places, so many countries. And he was once on his journey, on his traveling, that he came across a group of people who said that behind this mountain is a tribe called Yajuj and Majuj, Gog Magog. And they sometimes cross the mountain and they come and kill the people, they cause all this kind of destruction and so on. So they requested Zulkarnain to build a wall to stop Yajuj, Majuj, Gog and Magog from coming across the mountain and causing their destruction. So it's mentioned that Zulkarnain then built this massive thick wall. And as mentioned in the hadith, that Yajuj, Majuj, every day they're breaking this particular wall. And again, there's a little bit left of the wall. And like we just mentioned with regards to inshallah, they say, okay, tomorrow we will come and break it. But what happens that tomorrow they will come, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would restore the wall back to its normal size and even more thicker. And they then obviously have to break it again. And this will continue to happen until one day before the end of time, before Day of Judgment, they will say, okay, inshallah, tomorrow we will come and break it. So when they will come tomorrow, they will find it as it was the day before. They will finish off the remaining part of the wall, then they will come out, and then, as mentioned, they will cause fitna, they will drink all the water, cause killing, bloodshed. And it will be during the time of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. Isa alayhi salam will do dua for their destruction, obviously mentioning the books of hadith. Now the third question, just very quickly, they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was with regards to the ruh. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. Now the haqiqat or the reality of the ruh is something which only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. As mentioned in the Quran itself, الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي, which means that the ruh is from the secrets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And going back to what the Jewish rabbi said, that look, if he could answer the first two, which was regarding the people of the cave, so there was a very detailed answer regarding that, regarding Zulkarnain. But the third one, he would not answer. Because the answer, the true answer, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, then that means he's a true prophet. So regarding the ruh, the ayat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي, that the ruh and the soul is something which is from the secrets of Allah, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. So the true reality or the haqiqat of the ruh, Allah knows. However, scholars have kind of tried their best to define ruh, and to a certain extent I'll try my best as well to explain the reality of ruh for the next few minutes or so. Now, according to the majority of the scholars, they have said that the ruh is a subtle body. In Arabic we call it jism al-latif, a subtle body which is inside our zahiri body, which is inside our zahiri jism, which is inside our apparent body. And they kind of interact with each other, they connect with each other the same way rose water does with the water. For example, rose water, so you got the water there and you got the smell, the fragrance. Now, you know that rose and the water, they're actually together. It's difficult to differentiate and distinguish between both of them. The rose water, which is inside the water, you can't separate it physically. So exactly here as well, that the ruh is the jism al-latif, is the subtle body, which is inside our zahiri body, which is inside our zahiri jism, and it's difficult to differentiate and to take one away from the other. And then he goes on to say that as long as this jism al-latif, i.e. this ruh is inside our body, there is hayat, there is life. However, when this jism al-latif, when this ruh goes away, then there is no hayatiness, i.e. will pass away. Now there are many ahadith which talks about this particular ruh. There's a hadith that when Sayyiduna Israfil alayhi salam, who will be blowing the trumpet, which will signal the end of time and the end of this world and the beginning of the hereafter. So it's mentioned that when he will blow this particular trumpet, the ruh will come to him, all the ruh of the people will come to him. And it's mentioned that the believer's ruh will be like, with nur will come like luminous, and it will be light. And the people who were bad people, who were like disobedient people, who were non-believers, then their ruh will come to Israfil alayhi salam all dark. And it's mentioned in the hadith that similar to the Hajr Aswad, i.e. the ruh changing from luminous color, i.e. from nur to darkness, is similar to the black stone. As mentioned in the hadith of Sunan al-Tirmidhi, that when the black stone came, it actually came from Jannah and from paradise. And it was white as milk. Then what happened? People, when they then started doing the istilam and kissing it, then their sins then passed on to the white stone, but which now has turned black because of the sins. So exactly same with regards to the ruh, that when a person is created, because everyone is created on iman and fitrah, so everyone's ruh is all white, is luminous, but then obviously if that person now maintains the sanctity, maintains the respect, then the ruh, it remains white. However, if a person does bad things, unlawful things, then what happens is that the ruh then turns black. Inshallah, we'll continue with it next week as well, because I need to mention some difference between the ruh and the nafs. These two words which sometimes are used interchangeably, but there is a difference between the ruh and the nafs, and also we look at the shakl and surah of the ruh. How does the ruh look like? Basically, the ruh, the jism al-latif which we're talking about, it has exactly same features as the zahiri jism which we have. So the same way, like for example, we've got eyes, the ruh inside us also has eyes as well. The same way we have a nose, the ruh inside also has a nose as well. That's why when we say in terms of like tazkiyah and tasawwuf, like when we do zikr, we're doing zikr on the qalb, not on the qalb which is the zahiri qalb which is inside our body, but we're doing the zikr on the spiritual qalb. Okay, so that's what the ruh is. So the same way the ruh, like it's not like a particular soul which is inside it. The same way we've got like eyes and ears and nose and arms and so on. The ruh inside, it also has the same. But think of like, for example, our outer body, our zahiri jism, to be the libas and the clothes for the ruh inside. Yes, so the same way like we're wearing clothes, jackets and jumpers, the arms there, they are the libas, they are the clothes for the spiritual ruh inside. Okay, the nose and everything, they're all like considered to be a concealment or a libas for the spiritual ruh inside. Inshallah, we'll touch on that in a bit more detail next week.